How's it going, folks? I'm Matthew. This is Lemora's Cards, and today we are looking at the 13th God of Commander, everybody's favorite tournament series. This happened this past weekend, the same time as Frenzy at the Falls, and it is another large Japanese tournament with some pretty cool decks to take a look at this time. These are obviously a crowd favorite. I had to do this even though I wanted to get my Frenzy at the Falls stuff down. This is kind of, the thing you guys know me for at this point. It's the thing I hear the most about, so I'm excited to really get to take a deep dive. I looked at what topped, but I haven't really taken a super deep dive into the decks yet. I like doing my kind of live reactions to those, trying to figure out what's going on. Today, looking at the top 12 deck list plus the previous God of Commanders. I'll go over how these events work if this is the first time you're watching one of these, what each of these decks are trying to do, best of my ability. Again, the Japanese players tend to innovate with some pretty cool spice. Just talk through what these decks are and showcase some of the really cool stuff that they have going on over there. Also wanted to say the last God of Commander got such a huge push from Japanese players where it seemed like a lot of them really responded to it and really enjoyed hearing their metagame talked about and just found that video. And it was really sick. I've talked to a bunch of Japanese players since then. I've heard that their reception over there for me is very kind. So I'm hoping I get over there at some point and get to meet some of these players because it's just such a cool scene. I love their community. It's so interesting. If you enjoy this video, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know down below what you're thinking about these Japanese cEDH decks and their metagame in general. And I think with all of that being said, we can go ahead and hop into it. The winter solstice is here. So on December 21st, come out for one last big event this year with Solstice, presented by NJ cEDH. Going down in Mount Arlington, New Jersey, this platinum event features cash prizes, is fully proxy friendly, and is selling out quickly. Their last event capped with a huge waitlist, so don't miss out on your chance to get your ticket now. To find out more, check out the event page or join the New Jersey cEDH Discord, both links in the description below. So this one's going to be very similar to the previous video in terms of the structure and the resources that we kind of have access to. Briefly, what these tournaments are: this is a open Swiss tournament with one exception, basically, where people sign up, show up, play rounds of Swiss. It functions on a point system where everyone begins the tournament with the same number of points, and winning a game, you take a percentage of all your opponent's points. When it's a draw, everybody loses a smaller percentage of their points, and you cut to top 12 at the end of Swiss, where you break up into 3 different pods for the people who had the 12 highest point totals. And then you all play to see who goes to top 4, where you play against the previous God of Commander as well. They kind of have their slot saved as part of your prize for winning the previous event. And that's most of it with the structure. It heavily disincentivizes you to draw. You kind of just have to play to win. It's not really a structural thing, but Japanese players tend to be much less political from what I hear. There's a whole lot less of excessive yapping, and it's mostly just playing your cards. Somebody goes to win, you maybe show a card or two. But it's not really a structural change, just kind of a difference in how they play. But there is a very win-focused kind of mentality that you have to have when draws don't give you any kind of boost. You want to just get a win. All right, so since these last couple have had these metagame breakdowns, so we're gonna get to take a look at that. Translated, the best that they've done it. They mention some of the avatar cards, commanders like Aang at the Crossroads, these cards being popular in general, and some of the stuff that made the top 12, and then we have, some Final Fantasy stuff still popping in with Vivi and Kefka. If you've watched these, so here we see 156 participants. I'm guessing the 157th is the God of Commander, or maybe it was only one player drop. That'd be kind of crazy if only one player dropped. I don't know if this is larger than the previous one. I'd have to go back and look at that. But if you've watched these, you'll know that a lot of green decks have been really popular. Like Derevi was always super popular, just green piles of stuff. The last event was sort of the show, or at least the breakout of Sami Blue as an archetype. Here, this is aligning a lot more with what I would expect at a tournament in the US. Tymna Kraum is the most popular deck, which shouldn't really be surprising in general when the person who has now won the most God of Commanders by a lot has been playing it the entire time. But we have Tymna Kraum as the number one, 14 users, entries, whatever. Rog Silas, second most popular. Then we have Tivit and Rog Thras, both with 6. You will just see still not like an insane amount. So this is almost 10% of the field is on Tymna Kraum, but then the rest is a pretty big drop off to your 3s, your 2s, and just tons and tons of 1-ofs that are showing up. But decks like Najila, which has basically died over here. I wouldn't be surprised if there were just literally none in a large event. Your Cannons, Dahadas, TNTs, Urza. You have Rog Tevish, which has been not like overwhelmingly popular over there, but was on like a really good streak of topping a lot of these events. We got the Fortune Teller of Disaster, Gralb. I love the translations. Perforos, Ral Monsoon Mage. This seems like a great deck to bring over to there. Only 1 Corvolt or 2 Corvolts. I would say looking at it, I mean, Kefka and Vivi being popular, these are still popular over here. They're definitely, taking a big drop, especially Vivi. Nothing too insane. I mean, 3 Urzas. Again, once you get to the 2s and 3s, it's like nothing is that surprising. There's stuff that's really strong that isn't popular over there, but also like some of our best, like Ral isn't that popular here, even though it's kind of a broken deck, and even Roxai is underplayed. Here, it's honestly getting a more, relative to what they've got, more reasonable representation, probably. Wrath Founder, that's the one that copies an artifact, but so many 1-ofs. There's a whole lot. You can see there's a lot of Teysa Karlovs, another Teysa, Ketramos, Stella Lee, Thousand Faces of the Reverse Island. Oh, this is Sakushima. But yeah, just tons of ones. I really wish, people always ask me for these deck lists. They don't have them. If they have them, they don't post them. I would go through these all day, every day. There's not really a lot to talk about with this. TNT is not too popular. I guess I will mention that Derevi I don't even see. I'm sure there is one here. Helga, is it too? Yeah, a deck that was like super, super popular, just like kind of falling out of their metagame. Again, not a lot to mention with this, but this information is available if you're interested. And next we're going to be looking at the top 12 player profiles. This is something I really like to see more of here. I think this began with the previous God of Commander, number 12. It may have been on 11, but I think it started with 12. And just in general, like, they are a large, company, the biggest organizer and store in Japan by a lot, to my knowledge. But this is just such a cool little thing along with the metagame breakdown. But just I would love to see more tournament organizers do stuff like this, with like celebrating their players and also talking about what the turnout of their event was like and what their metagame looked like. The little things like this that sort of cement players in this sort of permanent status, stuff is online, is there forever mostly. It's a lot of the appeal of like top 16 breakdowns that like I do and that Ian does, and that people get excited to see their deck in. And this is like such a small thing where they just have like a couple questions, and then they get a profile on the site, and then they can be like, hey, there's stuff about me, and they get to shout out their group or whatever. So I'm not gonna read through all these, but I do want to show it. With the Aang at the crossroads, you get to hear a little bit more about what was doing well, which is one thing I really like, because you never get that by just looking at a deck list or a top 16. They're talking about, they played Aang, they went 5-1 in the Swiss, so just destroying people, and the best card in the deck was Felidar Guardian. And they said some cards they've been impressed with are Cloud Shift, which might also be in their deck, probably, but maybe just in general, seeing more of that card, something you get to know. And then where they play, where their shops. Person at second on Tivit, talking about Displacer Kitten, best card in the deck, also going 5-1, destroying people. Really impressed with, what is this, Unctus? Mimnon. I have to read this card. Look at the top, it has flying. Look at the top card of your library anytime. Cast artifacts from the top. Artifacts control have add blue. Spin only cast spell from anywhere other than your hand. That's pretty cool. So it's like an Urza future sight type thing. Tymna Kraum talking about ad nauseum. I wouldn't have guessed that based on the name. Card they've been super impressed with. Stormkiln Artist. Badger Mole. Wall of Roots popping off in Tayam. I'm excited and nervous to talk about Japanese Tayam. But again, this is just another really cool thing you get to hear about, where, you might not know what the Sami pilot is prioritizing, but they say the best card in the deck has been Silver Shroud Costume. I love this. Tell us some cards you were impressed with. None, really. Your decks suck. Everybody else's deck sucks. Best card Island. Broken. Impressed by Tivit. But again, it's a little thing, but it is, I think, really, really sick to get these sort of profiles and just have a little bit more info on the players and a little bit more information about like what was doing them well. And it would take, 5 minutes to really ask these questions of the players. I think adds a lot to like making your tournament seem important and making your players feel important. Use the link in the description below to download Whatnot, and you'll get $15 to use to buy Magic singles, sealed product, get anything that you want, really. There's no limits. You just get $15 on the account for free just for signing up. Use the link in the description below. Give Whatnot a try. All right. We're on Moxfield for this one because I had to bring these decks over from their website. Sometimes there's a weird translation thing. Best I could tell, no cards got goofed up on the way over. If something super stands out, there's a chance it was that. But first up, we have Animar. Soul of Elements, not the elements. Teamer, Pro White Black. Whenever you cast a creature spell, put a counter on it, and creatures you cast cost 1 less for each +1/+1 counter on him. Very popular, sort of more historic over here. cEDH commander with lots and lots of infinite combos. I think saw this in the last one, or at least I saw builds in the articles that we're talking about, like semi-blue style deck building. So you're gonna have tons of combo enabling things like Shrieking Drake, turns a creature to your hand. Very easy to go infinite by bouncing creatures. Like that's kind of the default play pattern of this deck, or like Ancestral Statue. When it enters, return itself, and you can cast infinite creatures and get infinite whatever creatures cast to draw your deck or do any kind of game action. Bounce other creatures to reset tutors, things like that. So some notable ones, we have just lots of mana enablers like Tinderwall, Wild Cantor, tons of dorks. You see we're on 57 creatures. It's kind of all our deck is about. New cards like Badger Mole Cub, amazing. We are doing like Enduring Vitality stuff, so that doubles up with that. And with all of our dorks already. Dreamstalker is another ETB bounce a permanent. We get a Storm Drake, a Fairy Mastermind, Cloud Fimage, Wan Shi Tong. I expect to be in a lot of these blue decks. Fierce Empath on its way out, unfortunately. Of course, I ordered a Japanese foil OG of this right before Formidable Speaker got revealed. Generous Patron, a green card that started to get some popularity over here too, at least some awareness in the US after the last video and talking about semi-blue. Just a way to draw some cards, and especially with Animar, being able to repeatedly draw cards on a stick is incredibly useful to go through your deck. Really interesting and cool one too is Sicarian Infiltrator, which can scale a lot better off of just a raw Animar reduction because it's 2 and a blue with flash, squad 2, so you can pay 2 any number of additional times to make copies. And when it enters the battlefield, draw a card. So this lets you, for each 2 you want to spend, or for each 2 you have a reduction from Animar, get an extra draw trigger. Supportive Parents has been a cool card that we haven't really seen take off, but it lets you tap 2 untap creatures to add 1 mana of any color, especially if you have the free creatures that get to come in. It's pretty easy to just loop and be netting mana or getting the cost for free by casting like a free, Ancestral Statue, and anything that just costs a pip, they kind of just pay for each other. Semi-blue staple, Radagast the Brown. This is a card I don't think I had the awareness of when I last covered this, but is like one of the most busted parts of this deck. It essentially says when it or another creature or non-token creature enters, look at the top X, where X is the mana value, get a creature that doesn't share a type. So like if I have Radagast the Brown, which is an Avatar Wizard, and I have Animar, which is an Elemental. So I have Avatar Wizard, Elemental. I have cast Ancestral Statue, which is a Golem. Is not going to overlap too much with a lot of our stuff, and I can repeatedly cast this, and every time Radagast will let me look at the top 4, and then I can get an Eldrazi Fungus, I can get a Human Bard, I can get not a Fairy Wizard because I have an Avatar Wizard, but I can get a Beast Whisper, and now we have drawn our deck. It's not too difficult for Radagast to just win the game on its own, and like the other semi-blue style decks like Rock Thras, things like that. But in this deck, it has a ton of overlapping combos with Animar specifically. So I'm going to go over every Animar card. I will mention Volo as a similar-ish card. It's whenever you cast a creature that doesn't share a creature type with a creature you control or one in your graveyard, you copy that spell. So in this scenario, you don't have a Drake. Cast Peregrine Drake, you get 2 Peregrine Drakes, a zillion D mana, stuff like that. And we just have ways to keep it going, like Vizier of the Menagerie is going to let us keep casting spells. We have Smirking Spelljacker is pretty sick interaction that you get as a creature, which when it enters, you exile target spell, and then when it attacks, you can cast the spell, which can be really, really sick. And we got things like Null Drifter, Hullbreaker Horror, Great Whale, Hulking Metamorph, just some bangers. Again, if you have kept up with the semi-blue kind of stuff, some of these will be very familiar to you. And then there's some more Animar specific stuff like all the non-land bouncers. Step through as our only sorcery, 8 instants. We gotta be really lean. We're trying to cast creature spells, right? So Summoner's Pact, Fluster, Misstep, Fierce, Swat as the only protection. So all free stuff that doesn't require a high blue count. No forces. Well, Fluster not free, but just broken. Same with Legolas's Quick Reflexes. And then these 3 being tutors. Just the 1 artifact on Chrome Mox, which is really interesting. 29 lands probably supports Mox Diamond. I'll say that this tournament is not proxy friendly. Whether that matters or not, I don't know. We did see people just kind of skew away from Mox Diamond in general in the last one. I don't know if that's a meta call with how they feel about land counts and how active that card is. Obviously, Chrome Mox is going to be a higher percentage of the time online, but how much the color fixing matters to you is a big part too. This deck does have a lot of 2-color creatures, so it can work a little bit better. Hard to really say. It is, better than Lotus Petal in a deck that isn't just trying to win that turn, is why you might run that. But yeah, they are going to be very creature heavy. And then, are we a Collector Oof deck? We are are a collector roof deck too, so that also leans into that. Then we have Utopia Sprawl, Wild Growth, and Food Chain to not really do stuff with Animar, but we have seen value Food Chain in other decks. I don't know if we have an infinite... I don't see a Cast from Exile card, but we're going to be able to Food Chain so much that we'll functionally have infinite mana and just go absolutely insane and just never run out of pips, which is going to be the thing that could stop you from going off with Animar because all of your generic mana costs are basically paid for. And 29 lands, we are on Cavern of Souls, Cradle, of course, all the duelist fetches, no other utility lands other than Seiju Adawara. Next up, we're taking a look at Rogsai. Be curious to see how different these are. And we have one big difference, which is pretty cool. So the creatures, Rag, Bowmasters, Thoracle, Spirit Guide, Valley Flood Caller. Notable exclusion from the American list that is basically a staple, even more so than Bowmasters, is Bergie. Don't have Bergie here, but we do have a big value engine in Grixis and Kefka just in the deck. That is a pretty sick way to repeatedly generate value over the course of a game that's harder to interact with than, you know, like a Rhystic or a Mystic, and it has its own disruptive elements as well. Obviously, fueling your own graveyard is pretty fine. Fueling opponents' graveyards in what's probably a Mnemonic Betrayal deck, also pretty good. I'm curious how this would play. It honestly probably isn't too bad. But of course, if you're a Nas deck and you flip a 5-drop, not exactly what you're hoping to see. The more you're all about jamming, the worse this looks. But if you are fine to slip into the mid-range, you don't mind drawing into more mid-range things that especially don't need an enabler, right? We've seen people on the Mirror Maze and the Copy Enchantments. If those aren't online, you know, if there's nothing for them, they're kind of bad cards. Kefka is at least always there and able to draw cards and generate value. So something to think about. Sorceries is looking pretty similar to what I expect here. A couple differences. Both the extra turn sorcery effects. We are on Plunge and Right, both Demonic Tutors. No Demonic Council. We are on Praetor's Grass though, which I think has become a little bit less popular in some of the Rogsais, but you know, obviously still like staple status. Wheel of Misfortune, Windfall. This, I would guess, is probably a concession for the proxy thing because I think Twister is mostly better than Wheel of Misfortune. Not strictly better. They are different cards, but the $5 versus the whatever 5,000, pretty big part of a non-proxy event. And that's just like a fine thing anyways. Wheel of Misfortune is probably about as good most of the time. It gets countered less often. We are in the meme bed as well, J-Will. Most of the stuff we expect. Sorceries, we're on Slaughter Pact. Dude, I hate the I gotta change my defaults on here. This like white border calling the week and this goofy Reddit demonic consultation. Not a fan, not a fan. We're on Slaughter Pact, so prioritizing removal. We're on Dispel, Flood Maw, Rain of Filth, Double Red Blast, Swan Song. Oh, that's Cabal Ritual. Okay, I didn't know that existed. We are in the Days, Final Fortune. So it is very similar to what we would expect over here with like Slaughter Pact, Dispel being the main things that stand out. Of course, we got the Nas, Force Will, No Force Negation, Fierce Swat, the Flare. Rollick isn't always the most played, but it pops up. Certainly more played than Slaughter Pact. Artifacts, we are Grinding Station deck, Wishclaw, Know the One Ring, got the Grid, Fast Mana. We are in the Mox Diamond here. The Rock's a little different. We don't always see Felwar Stone over here, but 2-mana Rock's a 2-mana Rock. Notable difference here is Guild Artisan is virtually unplayed in Rogsai lists over here. These other cards being staples. Guild Artisan is another card where like if you expect things are going to be like kind of slow enough, could be worth it. A lot of times the turn it comes down, it can pay for itself. The more creature heavy pods are, the easier it is to just actually have the 2 blockers needed for Rograk. But this has been a card that people kind of talk about in these decks. It's just not too popular. 25 lands, a little bit higher than we run. We are on Forbidden Orchard, not too popular. Luxury Suite, the rest pretty much staply. We got the City, you got the Ancient Tomb, Badlands. So all the duels, yeah. And then we are on Emergent Zone, which I think is pretty cool. We've seen this adapted more in the Mardu decks over here, where I've seen these in like some Tymna Dargos, things like that. It's an interesting one because it's not like you can crop rotation for it, but it is still a card you can like tutor for. And if they expect to have to interact with it, they can't really, if they're just waiting to see what you grab. So if you already have the Necro, it's pretty good. It's a cool thing to get to sandbag and dig for on your first Necro attempt. And they basically can't stop it. So if you dig super deep on Necro and you E-zone, you know, it's a very small number of things they can do to stop that. Seems like a reasonable inclusion. Japanese Rogsai, not too different from our own. A couple concessions maybe for their own metagame and just trying some stuff out with the Kefka. It seems pretty sick. Then we have a Tivit rocking Tezzeret Cruel Captain, which cannot find your Time Sieve, but can find a whole bunch of other stuff. Okay, some cool inclusions. We got Esper Mockingbird, Weathered Wayfarer, which is a card that has just been played in these Japanese Tivit lists, and just in general sees a lot more play over there. Wan Shitong showing up, of course. We are on the Opposition Agent, which is just not popular at all here. What Tivit players are doing recently, I'm not sure, but I mean, they're probably playing it in Esper, but just in terms of the staple status of Opposition Agent is gone in terms of it being like a Tymna Kraum card and stuff like that. Ranger, we got the Kitten, Urza, and then we got Edgar, King of Figaro. 4 blue. When he enters, draw a card for each artifact you control, which can be a lot. And then the first time you flip 1 or more coins each turn, those coins come up heads and you win those flips. I don't know if we're on any coin flip cards, but this is, especially if it follows up your Tivit, gonna often draw you 3 to 5 cards, maybe more. Especially you got some Urza or Kitten stuff going on. That could draw you a lot of cards. Also, like more broken ETB. Once you have, like Kitten Tivit is already really strong. Kitten on Figaro or Edgar, whatever. I would probably call him Figaro. But Kitten on Edgar, once you have like 4 or 5 artifacts already, that's significantly stronger than you can alternate if you need to, but that is very, very strong. Then we do have 13 mana Emrakul, the mid-range game breaker, taking over stuff, very hard to interact with. So this is stuff that's in, I'm guessing this is one of the Tivits that I've covered before, because there's a lot of card selection that I'm remembering seeing, like Nuclear Fallout as another board wipe option. Can also use this as an infinite mana outlet. I don't even know if you run that, but that is a thing you can do where you give all of your opponents infinite rad counters and then they'll more or less die. Starfill Invocation, you can gift a card so someone can draw a card, destroy all creatures, and then you can return a creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. So often, especially you have a Tivit, a Figaro, an Urza, whatever, you get to wipe the creatures, and it's a little bit better than just not destroying your own because you do get that ETB again, which is quite nice. Heavily prioritizing board wipes, right, with Fallout, Toxic Deluge, and Starfall Invocation. 26 instants, pretty controlling. We got the Orim's Chant, Stubborn Denial, Abeyance, so really going in on those silence effects. Permission Denied, so there's another silence type effect. We've got Drown in the Lock, which you don't see over here too much anymore. Mana Drain, we got Trick Bind, Dovin's Veto. We got Mystical Teachings and Waterlogged Teachings. So 3 and a blue, search for an instant card or card with flash, reveal it, put it in your hand, and then it has flashback for 6. And then Waterlogged Teachings is kind of the same with no flashback, and then can be a blue-black land that comes in tapped. So this can go get you pretty much anything you need, right? It is expensive. This is kind of a late game value tool. It does get to come back. This is like an OG blue-black control banger. Psych Rift, all these silence effects, Force of Will. We're not messing around with Fierce Guardianship. Mystical Teachings to go grab. I mean, it can go get interaction when you need it, and then later you have a ton of mana, you just go get your tutor to win the game. Pretty cool. It's a pretty cool option. Not something we've seen a lot of in cEDH recently, at least. Artifacts here. Okay, we got some cool stuff here. So we are on the keys with Manifold Key and Voltaic Key to untap the One Ring or our Time Sieve, potentially even Mana Vault, Grim Monolith, all that good stuff. Run the Enigma Jewel, which for a blue enters tapped, and it can add double colorless to activate abilities. And then you can craft it for a whole bunch of mana. You're probably not going to craft it. It does let you do some interesting stuff if you do craft it. So I can craft it. Has each ability of the exile cards. I can activate those abilities. So you could technically use this as like a super time sieve if you exile your time sieve. I think that's a little bit much, but just 1 mana and this like cracks a clue. It's like a soul ring for clues, or your even paying, like it makes it reasonable to untap your Grim Monolith, activate your Urza. Maybe there's some land abilities you have, it can pay for Manifold Keys, stuff like that. The Signets, which are running, Orzhov Signet, Azorius Signet, Demir Signet, it pays for those. That's going to be pretty good too. Curious how this one's played out. And then we are on One Ring and then Time Sieve, of course. Enchantments, we got Mystic, Ristic, Tithe, Dress Down In, Touch the Spirit Realm. Nothing too wild going on over there. No copy enchantment type effects. 32 lands overall. Archway of Innovation. We're really leaning into the artifact synergy stuff that we can have in this deck. Cavern of Souls, Darkwater Catacombs. I guess this can pay for the lands too, right? To activate abilities. So yeah, for the fixing lands. That's the thing with this Tivit list in general, is they really prioritize these pip fixing kind of cards, like Great Hall of the Citadel, these lands. We got Mistrazed Village in here as well. That can pay for Urza Saga. And we're on Urza's Cave to get Mistrise probably as Archway could be good too. There's some interesting stuff with the lands where we have Weathered Wayfarer, Urza's Cave. We are running Talon Gate, so we can opt to go grab that. The Manama for Ring, Mistrise Village makes something uncounterable. Cavern of Souls on Rogue or whatever. Archway of Innovation if you have a ton of artifacts to play like a free Emrakul or something like that. But really still leaning into this more land centric stuff too, and artifact stuff. Pretty cool stuff going on here with the Tivit. Is very similar to the last time I covered it. I guess Tezzeret can also get Enigma Jewel because it costs 1. Can get the keys. Mana Vault Expedition Map. Again, just really prioritizing our land drops, that's for sure. Pretty cool. Really cool stuff here. Next up, 6 mana Narset. Narset Enlightened Master. First strike hexproof when it attacks. Exile top 4 cards. So on a turn, you can cast non-creatures from among them without paying their cost. So we run big old non-creature spells. Got a few planeswalkers. Narset, Teferi, kind of hateful ones. Jace, which is mostly just your brainstorming every turn, which can let you reset your like if you have a big spell in hand, you can put it on top to trigger Narset. Jace Wielder of Mystery is the one that has like the Thras' Oracle or Lab Man kind of effect, which we can use as a win con. We got Ugin the Spirit Dragon for 8 mana. Deal 3 damage to any target. Exile each permanent converted mana cost. X or less, it's 1 or more colors. So you can do this on 5 and still keep your Narset, which is pretty sick. That's basically a one-sided board wipe. Creatures, not going to run too many because our deck, cares about non-creatures. We've got Ragavan, Generator Servant, which is going to let us ramp up and give haste to our Narset. Voice of Victory as our only silence creature. It's the easiest one to cast, so it makes sense. Spirit Guide is a ritual, and Hellkite Courser, which 6 mana, ETB, put your commander into play, gains haste. So this will be easier to cast with the pips more than likely, and then also just have a hasty Narset come into play. Lots of sorceries. You're going to see lots of extra turn effects and extra combat effects, right? Ritual on J-Will. New card, which is pretty cool. Avatar's Wrath. 2 white. Choose up to 1 target creature, then airbend all other creatures. So you get to leave your Narset in play. Until your next turn, your opponents can't cast spells from anywhere other than their hands. So every creature on the board can't be cast for airbending until your next turn. Then you exile this card. So it wipes the board while leaving Narset in play, and it's only 4 mana. And can have other synergies too. Not really so much in this deck. Like let's say you had already cast like Hellkite Courser and your Narset actually wasn't in play. This will let you then have a 2 mana Hellkite Courser to replay. Pretty cool stuff. Seize the Day, Capture of Jing Zhao. I'm not even gonna go over all these because it's all extra turns and win the game cards like Seagate Restoration, which you can draw you a ton of cards. Enter the Infinite, which draws functionally your deck. Rise of the Eldrazi, destroy a permanent, draw 4 cards, take an extra turn. And then these basically will functionally win the game if they resolve with Narset, because it's going to be so, especially the ones that take 2 extra turns, it's going to be very hard to keep the Narset from winning if they already got to do the attack once undisturbed. 18 instants. We're on Fierce SWAT on a 6 mana commander, but we do really want to protect it, and our game plan is get it out into play, right? No like red rituals to help speed her up. We're on the Blast, the Silences, Mana Drain can help a lot. Nexus of Fate is an extra turn spell you can loop. Artifacts. We got Disruptor Flute to be disruptive. Lightning Greaves to haste out our commander. Grim Monolith, other fast mana. Then we got Camille, which means your spells can't be countered, which is pretty huge for the Narset cards, right? Because Narset herself is hard to interact with, but the cards can still just be like fierce or whatever. So if you flip into like 2 good ones and Camille, play Camille first, it's got to eat the interaction there, or the other ones are going to be uninteractable. And then at the beginning of your end step, you get to discover 5, so you still get value out of it too. Mystic Ristic Breach. Dress Down. I have some other bang. Okay, this is cool. Windcrag Siege. If a creature attacking causes a triggered ability to happen, it happens again. The other mode sucks, so you're probably going to use that one and get double Narset triggers. Smothering Tithe, no brainer. 1,000-Year Storm. When you cast instant or sorcery, copy it for each other instant and sorcery you cast this turn. Functionally giving your stuff instant and sorcery storm. That's pretty broken. Any extra turn effect, again, we'll probably just win with that. And then one with the Multiverse. Look at the top card. Play lands and spells. Once during each of your turns, you can cast something for free from your hand or the top of your library. So free spell that gets you a free spell, a giant one at least. Arena of Glory to haste us out. We're not on Hall of the Bandit Lord, I think, is the other haste enabler. We got Mist Rise, City of Traders, though. Cavern to make her uncounterable. Mystic Sanctuary to buy back some of those extra turn spells. Put them on top. Traditional-ish Jeskai mana base other than that. All right, this is one I haven't got to talk about before. We got Sami Wildcat Captain. For 6 mana in Boros, you get a double strike vigilance 4/4. Spells you cast have affinity for artifacts, which is probably up there with like Corvold as some of the strongest text you can put on a commander. Affinity for artifacts is an unbelievably broken thing to have on any spell. In cEDH, most of them aren't too good because they're just like bodies, right? Like your Mirror Enforcers and stuff like that. But once you start giving it to Ugin and even just Tezzeret, anything that does more Inspired Tinkering, you're basically starting to get that Rowan kind of discount. You just got to work for it a little bit more, although you don't have to untap. That's the cool thing. Once she comes down, it just kind of happens. Big colorless stuff. Ugin, Tezzeret, help enable us, right? Tezzeret can go eat your mana vault. Guaranteed to Sami the turn after that. Ugin, when you cast colorless stuff, exiles things. You cast him, he does it. He makes 3 mana, draws cards. Just really powerful in general. Very disruptive to people. You can kind of wipe the board, even if you're not going to go off. Just start casting artifacts and wipe everything. Rag, Bergie, Goblin, basically all mana. We have an MDFC land, and then Sandstone Oracle, which is 7 colorless, 7 generic rather. Flying, ETB, choose an opponent. If that player has more cards in hand than you, draw cards equal to the difference. This will help make sure you don't run out of gas. We'll also punish people who are drawing off of engines. We don't have any of the silence creatures, so no Grand Abolisher, no Voice of Victory, none of that. We'll probably be on defense grid though, if I had to guess. Sorceries. Devastating Onslaught. So this does not scale with for creatures on Sami, really any of our creatures. I guess Sandstone Oracle, it can. That one you kind of have a diminishing returns on. Sticker Goblin, similar deal. But it also could target artifacts, which is probably what we're going to be using it for, because we'll have a bunch of artifacts to get a good one into play, and then giving this thing affinity. If we have 4 artifacts in play, for 1 red pip, we get 2 copies of an artifact, which is very, very nice. Zenith Festival exiles the top card. So this deck is constructed, if you paid, watch any of my Rowan stuff, kind of similarly in terms of payoffs, right? We've got the Past in Flames, Inspired Tinkering, which is great if you discount it. Snort, that's a way to not run out of gas. Will of the Jest guy. So we got Embrace the Unknown, which is a retrace, double impulse draw. Search for Glory will let us find a snow permanent, legendary, or saga. We'll see what we got in terms of that. Now the future, make sure you don't run out of gas. Imposing Grandeur. Each player may discard their hand, draw cards equal to the greatest mana value of a commander they own on the battlefield or in the command zone. So for Sami, that's 6. A lot of other commanders are going to be cheaper than that. Against your Rog Thrases, it's 2. Wheel, of course, don't run out of gas. So we got our sound effects here. Worms Chant, Silence. Other interaction, we have the 1 Pyroblast, Redirect Lightning, SWAT, Oblation. The owner of target non-land permanent shovels it into his or her library and draws 2 cards. That's interesting. Final Fortune, Kozilek's Command, banger here, especially with Affinity. Big ritual. And then we are a Searing Touch combo deck, right? Because if we have 4 artifacts and a Bergie in play, then we can cast Searing Touch with buyback, similar to the way you do it in Rowan or any of these other decks, with a discount, and that kills the table. Artifacts. This is where the money is. 43 artifacts. Jeweled Amulets, your Petals, all the Moxes you can throw in a deck. Manifold Key, Sensei's Top, Signets. There's that Defense Grid, Grinding Station. We're probably breaching. Though no LED, but breach is just going to be good to make sure we don't run out of gas. According to this player, best card in the deck for that day. Silver Shroud Costume, 2 mana flash. When it enters, attach a target creature you control. That creature gains Shroud until end of turn. So this is kind of a free counter spell protection spell to removal on Sami, which is going to be the main thing that can kind of get you. Because it's going to have affinity. Wait, somebody goes to remover, flash this in, enters, attach it, she gets Shroud, and then any other removal they might draw into is now going to be useless. They have to remove the Shroud and then Sami. Talisman, we're on Basalt Monolith, Coalition Relic, lots of big stuff once we get her into play. Hot Dog Cart, enters, make a food, so that ups our affinity, and this just adds 1 mana of any color. She would draw a card. We have no cards in hand, draw 2 instead. Gain life, we have 5 or less life, gain twice that much. Aetherflux Reservoir we can use as an outlet. God, just nonsense. Grinning Totem. Search your library for a card and exile it, then they shuffle. At the beginning of your next instance, you can play that. So you can use this to functionally have a free, so it'd be like a 2 mana Praetor's Grasp. And if you get to replay this, you can keep doing it. So you presumably can keep doing that. Heart of Ramos. Dude, this stuff is nonsense. Screwdriver. Interdimensional Web Watch. Exile top 2 cards. Add 2 mana any color. Sacrifice an artifact. Exile top X. We have big artifacts, right? We have Coveted Jewel to draw cards. Memory Jar to wheel for free. Dynamo. Chromatic Orrery to go off. The Instone. This is going to be basically a win con. When you play a land or cast a spell, draw a card. Spine of Vision, not blow anything up. Ridiculous. The Mystic Forge, keep going. 23 lands, artifact lands, of course, they're going to be in here. City of Traders, Gemstone. We got Mishra's Workshop. Great deck for that card. Treasure Vault, Urza's Saga. And then we are on Sandstone Needles of Depletion land. I don't think we're on the white one, whatever that one's called. Not a card I've got to talk about. I've seen it a little bit and heard people talk about it. Like, it is a exciting commander. It reads really cool. And we did finally get to see a result on it at a big event. Oh man, now we've got Tayam, a commander that is beloved by the people who play it, kind of hated by everybody else. I think it's cool, but it has certainly not been well positioned recently in the meta in America, at least. It can struggle to develop properly into the turbo stuff where you kind of have to have a stacks piece or you die. If you do focus on development and the pod is slower, the Thrasios stacks kind of just body you. So it can be in a really tough spot over here. Not sure if that has been the case in the Japanese meta, and maybe there's been some cool stuff that they developed. I know the avatar cards look pretty cool in Tayam. Let's take a look. Tyvar, honestly, one of the best cards in the deck. It's super sick too. Just enables so much nonsense. We have a whole bunch of dorks, sacrifice effects like Carrion Feeder, Acacia Money Changer. Not my ideal art. Let's switch my printing. This is the one, dude. This one looks crazy. That card's sick. Again, all the elves. We got Sylvan Safekeeper, which can help us do some loops, but like we can sacrifice our cradle, bring it back with Tayam, stuff like that. Weathered Wayfarer to go grab that. Undying creatures with Young Wolf. I guess maybe I should explain Tayam. It's kind of a lot, but each creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional vigilance counter on it. And you can spend 3, remove 3 counters from creatures you control, put the top 3 card in your graveyard, and then you can return any permanent card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So essentially what your general game plan in terms of churning is get Tayam down, have some creatures with counters on them. When creatures enter, they have counters, and then things like Carrion Feeder can sack a creature to get a counter. Put some counters on Carrion Feeder, activate Tayam, you can bring back one of those creatures that you sacrificed, right? It's really difficult to deal with stacks pieces out of Tayam because let's say that same scenario is happening and I have an Archon of Emeria. Somebody goes to kill the Archon, I sacrifice it to Carrion Feeder, get some counters out of it, activate Tayam, put the Archon back into play. The winning is usually done with a bunch of overlapping nonsense of cards that functionally need to generate infinite counters and infinite mana. There's a bunch of different ways to do it, ways to kind of pseudo loop. A lot of times you'll spin your wheels and kind of storm through activated abilities with like undying cards. You got like cards like Marvin, which are pretty good in these creature ability utility focused decks. Now Badger Mill Club is really, really interesting. This lets you put a counter on a creature, make a land a creature, at the same time, right? Like you go up a counter, your things tap for mana as well, or you're net more mana, which is really, really nice. I'm sure this does some absolute nonsense where you're able to activate the ability by removing a counter from a land. Earthbend triggers, land returns. Then you could like sacrifice it to a safekeeper or sacrifice the Badger Mole, return it, Earthbend the land again. I don't even know the combos that Tayam has access to with Badger Mole, but Badger Mole has a lot of nonsense going on with it in general. But yeah, it's a bunch of sacrifice effects, stacks pieces like Aethersworn Canonist, Troll Signaler, untap it to make a 1/1. That probably combos. There's a lot of that in Tayam, I promise. Circle of Dreams Druid is another cradle type effect. We're also really big on the cradles, right? During Vitality. Oh, so this is a banger. I haven't got to cover Tayam since this came out, but it's really sick in this deck. Patrolling Peacemaker enters with 2+1/+1 counters on it, so it'll be a 2/2. An opponent commits a crime, proliferate. So anytime they target anything that isn't theirs, you get to proliferate, which is very powerful in Tayam. On a 3-drop, you can repeat, and it comes with counters on its own. This thing, it's got to be a banger. There's so many counters. And how are people not going to commit crimes? They're just not going to counter spells and remove anything. Like, it's very hard to play a game of cEDH where you don't commit any crimes. That's pretty sick. Warden of the Grove, beginning of your instep, put a counter on it. Another non-token creature enters and endures X. So you make a creature that, or you'll put a bunch of counters on stuff. There's going to be some shenanigans with some of these new cards, but you can just read a deck that cares about counters and stuff. In terms of outlets, White Plume Adventure is one to just go and trap your opponents, deal 5 damage to them over and over. Sure, you can also assemble infinite damage. Eternal Autumn lets you exploit. Again, I can't go through all of Time. It's nonsense. We got Green Sense as a tutor. Mainly wanted to call it any new cards, and there's not too many. Twitching Doll is not one I've seen a lot of, but it makes sense because it adds counters as a dork. But most of the new callouts are just the Patrolling Peacekeeper. Warden of the Grove is relatively new. Definitely didn't exist last time I covered Tayam. Got Dismember as a tutor. Disruptor Flute, which can be really nice to help those bad matchups. I guess the Soul Cauldron is just a banger in this deck. Adds counters, copies abilities, messes with opponents' graveyards. LED also very, very strong too because it lets you just dump something into the graveyard to put into play with Tayam. More stack stuff, Deafening Silence, Rule of Law. We have Swift Recon to combo with Devoted Druid as a normal A+B. Cryptolithite and Earthcraft is ways to turn our creatures into mana. 33 lands. Got the Centaur Garden we talked about. Dryad Arbor. Gavany Township with the counter on each of your creatures. I think there's a new version of this type of effect too that's similar. Homeward Path in case somebody takes their stuff. Gilded Drake type effects pretty popular. Phyrexian Tower is very strong in this deck too. Urza Saga, again, Tayam has a lot going on with it. It takes a lot of playing against it to kind of understand what their interaction points are and what they can muster up from any board state. It is a very cool deck. Probably sound like a hater when I talk about it, but I actually really think the deck is very, very cool. It just is not performing very well generally, but you're getting new cards. There are people who love it. If people keep playing it, they'll get results, and that's what we got here. 6th place. This is one of the few like Tymna Kraums that isn't the God of Commander. I don't usually get to cover too many of them over there, but let's see what we're working with. Creatures were at 20, which is pretty high for what American Tymna Kraum looks like right now. We got DRC, Archivist of Ogma, Fairy, and Polywog as 2-drop value engines. Polisher Lotho, Voice. We are on the Delny, Facebreaker, Tataru, Floodcaller, and then we have 2 mana batteries in Vivi and Stormkiln Artist. 8 sorceries, Gamble Intent, No Grasp. We're not on Wheel, we're on Windfall. Both the DT effects. Yeah, seems reasonable. Chain, we're on the Rain of Filth. Okay. Spallrit, Born Upon a Wind. We're on the Flare of Dupe, which you tend to see in the DRC decks. It's not super active all the time, but we have a couple extra to help enable it. We're on Intuition, No Gifts Given. Force, No Force and Negation. LED, we are on the One Ring. Felwar, Arcane Signet. Pretty normal. The rocks over here are a little different. A lot of times just say the blue-white talisman or the blue-black talisman. And then we are in the Mamber. The 5 standard, kind of enchantments we expect to see in Tymna Kraum. And then 26 lands. 26, 27 is what you kind of expect right now. No City of Traders. We are in the Cavern of Souls. Fire of Industry. Exotic Orchard. No Forbidden Orchard. Everything looking up to code here. So yeah, not a lot to talk about with this one. Pretty normal TNK. Creature count definitely heavier than what we would expect, especially right now where they're trimming down on it. And you got people saying to cut Ranger Captain and shenanigans like that. But pretty high creature count here, playing more to the Tymna plan. Not too super heavy on it with cards that are specifically just for that, but do have lots of creature-based value. Delny probably looked pretty good in this list too. Next up, we have another Tivit. This time we got Teferi in the Planeswalkers. 11 creatures still on the Wayfarer. Very similar. No Edgar this time. Mockingbird, all that. No Abolisher and no Voice of Victory. This printing is memorabilia. Okay, you said it, dog. I didn't do this. We've upgraded. So we are on Twister. Stock up. Pretty sick. Sevrek, Transmute Artifact. Here we still do have, a few board wipes. This one in Day Illusion and also the Avatar's Wrath. Makes sense, kind of similar to why it would make sense in Narset. Although, honestly, a lot of times, I guess it depends. Like if you do this, when you're doing this, like if the Tivit is summoning sick or whatever, sometimes you probably will just airbend him too and pay 2, and then he's basically free. You just get more clues or treasures because he only costs 2 to recast. Instance, we've got Dispel, this time no offer. Silence, no Orange Chant, no Abeyance this time. Do have the Mana Drain and the Trick Bind. Limdol's Vault. We're on stuff out here. No Fierce Frolic, any of that. We're on the Word of Invention still. Sacred Stupor as an MDFC. Nothing else too wild standing out. Spider-Man. Gosh, MBT at $4. $11 foil, dude. Man, before the reprint, it was unbelievable. Okay, similar with some of the keys and stuff. We do have some other Japanese bangers like Staff of Completion. I still don't know why they run it really. One of them needs to tell me. It has those effects on it. It does the things that it says on the card. So of the signets, we have Imposter Mech as another clone. Repurposing Bay, which is really cool. This is the birthing pod, but for artifacts. It costs 2 to activate. Second effect, search for 1. Really easy to kind of work your way up the chain, right? If you have a bunch of mana, any 0 becomes a key, which becomes a time sieve. On Disruptor Flute, a couple different enchantments here with Copy Artifact, which was starting to become like a staple in general in cEDH, not so much nowadays. And then Black Market Connections. Makes you treasures, draws cards, makes some 3/2s. And then 29 lands, doing a little bit of the mana fixing lands, but not nearly as much as the last one. We got Skycloud Expanse. We don't have like the Demir one or the Orzhov one, I don't think. We're on Fomori Vault, which is a way to, you can spin 3, discard a card, look at top X, where you might have a lot of artifacts, can get you a lot of card selection just on a land, which is pretty nice. Similar-ish, there's leaning less into some of the artifact stuff, the mana fixing, opting for a wheel, some different considerations on the board wipes and stuff like that. First one of these we get to talk about. This is an interesting deck. I'm not even looking at the card yet, but just Aang at the Crossroads is not a commander I've spoke about yet. So it is Bant and 2, flying 3/3. When it enters, look at the top 5 of your library. You may put a creature card, mana value 4 or less, from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom. Whenever another creature leaves the battlefield, you can transform Aang at the beginning of the next upkeep. Don't really want to transform him too much. Just the thing you can do. Basically, the way people are building this deck is you just run Aang with a whole bunch of clones, and then you kind of do like a Garuda style game plan where you just keep flipping and flipping. I don't know how good this commander is yet. You basically don't accomplish anything with the clone plan until you have a doubler. And then that's when that actually is a real game plan, which if you flip into one, then you have to find another clone and cast it. So it kind of is like a 9 mana game plan, depending on the copies. But if you do the thing, then you're going up on creatures, and you're very likely to just get to, get a clone and another doubler, and then kind of get to churn through your deck and put a bunch of creatures into play. It also does go off with Food Chain. So we got Walking Ballista here as a combo outlet, Bant looking staples like your Dorks, Badger Mold Cub. We are on Kinnan, Tartar Voice, Elvish Spirit Guide. Katara is going to double our Aang triggers, so that's one of the cheaper ways we can do that. It is 3 pips though, so that's kind of like a 6 pip combo, if you will. Jackdaw Savior is kind of a cool one. When it or another creature you control with flying dies, return target creature card with lesser mana value from graveyard to the battlefield. This loops, I'm pretty sure, right? Because we have Jackdaw Savior, we have Aang, and we have like Flesh Dude. I don't know when Jackdaw, we have to get a judge in the chat. I don't know when Jackdaw checks the mana value, because the mana value of Flesh Duplicate as a copy of Aang is 5, and then it will die and be in the graveyard and will be a 2-drop. So it might be able to target itself. Either way, for sure, if you have 2 clones in graveyard, you can definitely start alternating them while you're getting Aang triggers, and when one dies to the legend rule, do the next thing. That I'm certain of, mostly. So that's probably honestly one of the more powerful doublers. You have Soul Herder to refire in the instep. White Plume is another outlet, and then we have a bunch of clones, right? Alter Ego, Chameleon, Clever Impersonator, Kitten lets you refire this whole thing and becomes busted. Gigantoplasm. We got Felidar and Emil to refire. Emil you can use to make infinite mana somewhere, maybe? Do we have infinite mana with Emil? If we're on Cradle, we can Emil Felidar. We'll have to see. We probably will be. Icewind Stalwart. When it enters, exile up to 1 target non-warrior creature you control and return it. So that's another kind of Felidar effect. Restoration Angel similar. Preston will have extra versions of Aang. We have Sakashima, which honestly might be a negative with some of the things that we're going to be doing, because I think it's better if these Aangs do die. So Sakashima might be honestly one of the worst clones of this, because we don't really get a lot from that. If we start cloning Kataras, that actually works better, but it is an option and it's another clone, right? Got Roaming Throne as a doubler, Sakashima, Seasoned Engineer can be another outlet, Spark Double. Starfield Vocalist is probably the cheapest doubler, because for 1 and a blue you can warp it, and then if you're able to go off from there, you probably win. Thassa Deep Dwelling, Instep Exiles. Wall of Stolen Identity is an insane name for a Magic card. What is happening here? It enters as a copy, you tap a thing. It's basically another clone, but Wall of Stolen Identity is insane. And then Avatar of Growth, semi-blue staple, essentially costs 1 green if you're in a 4-pod, and then each player can search 2 basics, put them into play, untapped, just as is. Against decks that don't run a lot of basics, it's a banger. This can help net you mana. Notably, Aang can't put it into play, but it's just kind of reasonably powerful card. Instance, we have protective pieces, not like a zillion of them. Fierce, Force, we got Silence, only the 1. We have Cloud Shift and Ephemerate and Essence Flux as flicker effects. Legolas's Quick Reflexes to protect our Aang, which is probably going to be really good because it won't be too uncommon, especially if you have a doubler, for you to cast Aang, trigger on the stack, try to remove Aang so you can't clone it, and then you Quick Reflexes and they're kind of just screwed. Not too many artifacts. Stuff to help us get Aang into play. We are not food chaining value or combo. We're at Carpet, Sprawl, Wild Growth. We do have Earthcraft, which is going to be really, really good. That's actually a smart thing to be doing if you're on basics, because all those creatures, Aang copies then start to net mana. In general, Earthcraft is kind of powerful if you can support it. Then we're on Solvin, Ristic Tithe. 29 lands. We're cradling. We got our basics. Probably shouldn't run 2 basic islands. One of these should be snow covered, just in case somehow, you get a Tanya pack to resolve. On Cavernous Souls, again, been very popular in this event. I'm not sure. I think this being somewhere between like a semi-blue deck and an Aang clone pile is pretty cool, because a lot of those things line up, right? You don't really have a mana outlet, so it doesn't make sense to run your Peregrine Drakes and things of that like. But these line up in how you play them pretty well. So I'm curious to see how this deck will perform. I don't think it functions into Draenith Magistrate as a magic deck, basically. Our removal for that is Chain of Vapor, Otawara. I don't think there's a creature that can remove it. Ballista for X equals 3. But we haven't seen any Draenith so far. So if people aren't going to punish you, just do the thing. Now we're getting into our top 4. I know you see the 3rd place, but remember, we are looking at the top 3 people from Swiss who also play against the previous God of Commander. So now we are looking in the top 4 and going over the people who made it, won their top 12 pods, made it to the top 4 to compete against the previous God of Commander to earn the title of God of Commander. Next up is exciting because it's Rog Thras, but it's not semi-blue. This is traditional Rog Thras in a Japanese list. So we got Invasion, 27 creatures, pretty normal for Rog Thras, maybe slightly higher than average, probably. So we do have more dorks than we tend to play over here. Birds, Halfling, Mystic, Elves. I honestly am starting to be more into this kind of thing, especially with Badger Mole Cub. Just the more dorks you have, the better. Make sure opening hands feel great. We're on the Sylvan Safekeeper, Mastermind, Duplicate, Cloud of Fairies. We do see a Boreal Breeze Caller, card that was nowhere to be seen in a lot of the Cradle Thrasios decks that we saw before is showing up. We do have Endurance as interaction and potentially to reset your cards, although you have Ewit and Spray on Antuco, so you don't really need that. But just put them in deck, it can matter. Again, Antuco's Storm Drake, we're on the Wan Shi Tong, Bambi here, Ewit, Spellseeker. Card we're definitely not used to seeing is Tishana's Sidebinder. 3 mana, ETB, counter up to 1 target activated or triggered ability. And then if it's a artifact, creature, or planeswalker, permanent loses all abilities while Tishana's on the battlefield. Reasonable card. So they're definitely prioritizing a little bit of flash, holding up their mana, right? Between like that, Wan Shi Tong, Endurance, Unagi, Thrasios activations, of course, and we'll see what else there might be. If you want to lean a little bit more controlling, that makes sense. I've seen TNTs run stuff like Subtlety, which can be free or just, thrown out for holding up the mana. You got it. We got Trinket Mage, which hasn't been too popular here. We'll see if they have a different target, but still does a lot of the things it used to do. Flood Caller. We're doing the Ice Steel Explorer, which I've been playing, I really like. I think if you're playing Sylvan Safekeeper, it overlaps pretty well. We're on the Metamorph, Microspawn, Seedborn, and Unagi of Kyoshi Island. Sorceries, Tutors with Green Sun's Finale, Nature's Rhythm, Sylvan's trying to get a land. Step Through is something I've seen Wrong Thras talk about, right? So this goes against a Wizard, which can be your Flood Caller, your Trinket Mage, Spellseeker, Tidebinder. You definitely have a decent selection of Wizards. Breeze Caller, of course. Wan Shi Tong is not one. Cloud of Fairies is not one. It's just a fairy. I wish if it was a Wizard, I'd be on Step Through already. So I think that would just be enough coverage to want to. It's already pretty close. And then they're on extra things like the Tidebinder. And then we are on Chatterstorm to create some bodies. Instance. So we're leaning more interactive. Pack Flush. We have Gut Shot as an outlet. Misstep. Noxious Revival. Just gets more text when you're on like Ice Till, stuff like that. We're not on Brain Freeze, so I'm assuming we're not breaching. Swan Song, which is decently popular, but Arcane Denial, which I've basically never seen in Heroic Thras, but it's pretty castable to counter target spell if you want to counter creatures. We're on the Psych Snap, Swat, Fierce. We are on both flares. Some people have moved off of the blue flare. I think I'm not on either right now. Red is probably going to come back. I've just been testing like some of the more landfall stuff. Probably put red flare back in. We're on Force Negation, MBT Forcible, and Commandeer. So really liking that pitch interaction, all that free stuff. 10 artifacts. We are on Mana Vaults. We got the Candle. The rest of here looks normal, but then we also have World Map. Less efficient Expedition Map, basically. It costs 1 to go get a basic, which is nice if you are doing Earthcraft stuff and you do plan to go get a basic, which you do, sometimes. And then, but it's 3 to go get a different land card, like your Cradle and stuff like that. So, if you like one, maybe the other is reasonable too. Then we got Training Grounds, Fish, Ristic, Cryptolith, Earthcraft, and then Psychic Possession, which is pretty cool. 2 blue. Enchant opponent, skip your draw step. Whenever that enchant opponent draws a card, you draw a card. So you put this on whoever is likely to draw the most magic cards, and then you will also draw those cards, which can be quite powerful. You put this on your TNK opponent, Thrasios player who's like way ahead, somebody who has an early Ristic, whatever. There you go. Then we're on 29 lands. We're on Cavern of Souls, which is pretty cool, but they are leaning into Wizards more, so that makes sense. Temple, Tower, E-Zone, Prismatic Vista, the basics, Saga. No Shifting Woodland is really surprising when you're on like Ice Steel and stuff like that. That card starts to get a lot better, I think, when you're on those cards. But not on it here. Talon Gates. Everything else looking pretty normal. So basically like Cavern of Souls over Shifting Woodland versus, a lot of the decks we have over here for the pure Simic Rog Thras build, which is, this is the first one I got to cover. Again, there's no red in any of these spells. Not breaching, not gambling, none of that. Second place. This is a cool one. I think I covered this one last time too. I think it's the same player. This is Semi Blue Helga doing it again, making top 4. So if you're not familiar, Helga is Bant for a Frog Druid. Cast a creature spell, mana value 4 or greater. Draw a card, gain a life, put a +1/+1 counter on Helga. And you can tap, add X mana of any one color where X is her power. Spend this mana to cast creature spells, mana value 4 or greater. Creatures with X in their mana cost. So Helga really rewards you for playing those big creatures, right? The Altered Egos, the Appas, Felidars, Ice Tills, Peregrine Drakes, Great Whales, things that are basically free or net you mana, especially right with the Great Whales, Palancrons, all that good stuff. They start to also draw you some cards while you're at it. So you don't have Thrasios to pump that mana into, but you just get it while you're doing the stuff, right? New stuff that they got access to. So a whole bunch of Dorks, Cloud, Wan Shi Tongs here. We got Endurance's interaction, Fierce Empath to Tutor. Generous Patron, like I mentioned, essentially draws 2 cards on ETB. Plagon's really cool. Your Plagon count is probably pretty high. Helga's like a 1/3, yeah. So enters, draw a card for each creature with greater toughness. Lots of stuff has it, right? Halfling, Birds of Paradise, Endurance technically, Generous Patron, Appa, the Plagon itself, Felidar Guardian, Ice Tool Explorer, lots and lots of cards that do it. Really, really busted with Starfield Vocalist, right? Because this adds to the count and this doubles the Plagon, so really, really strong. New card in Appa, which we talked about in the Avatar podcast episode, which has Flash Flying, 2 white. When it enters, airbend any number of other target online permanents you control. So that means you can pay 2 to recast them from exile. And then when you cast a spell from exile, make a 1/1. This is exactly the kind of deck that's going to break this card or make it look really broken because it enters, you already play, you draw some cards, you play a Peregrine Drake, draw a card, make some mana, play a clone of that, draw a card, make some mana, and then Appa, recast them, make them even more mana positive, and draw more cards off of your Helga. If you do that on like a Felidar Guardian, Appa, Flicker, all the stuff, but play all the things, draw the card, recast Felidar Guardian, Flickers Appa ETB, whoop, pick them back up, whoop, do it back again. Really, really, really good. Emil is going to net you infinite mana. Mist Hollow Griffin, we are a food chain deck. Similar stuff like we mentioned. So like clones, Radagast. We have Timeless Witness as a E-Wit that you can do again, but also draws a card. Underground Adventure we can use as a win con because we go through the Undercity. Fecund Green Shell, 5 mana, some text, but then mostly when it or another creature you control with toughness greater than its power enters, so go top card of your library if it's a land. Put in battlefield tap, otherwise put it into your hand. Doesn't draw, but again, it plays into a lot of the other stuff we're talking about. It's like similar to Radagast and lines up with Plagon. So it's lining up with like the Radagast and the Plagon and all these other things and the flickering. You see how this could get out of control. Torst, another big option. Null Drifter, 2 and a blue to draw 2, and it will draw 3 if Helga's in play. Quantum Riddler is awesome because it's a cheap Helga-able card. And then also, once you kind of do manage to run out of stuff, you will start to draw more cards off of the Quantum Riddler if you're able to keep dumping your hand. Sorceries, so we got Finale, Sylvan Scrying, Search for Glory, Wargate, Last March of the Ent, Semi-Blue Staple, and then Step Through. So mostly tutors, and then a big draw and win con. Basically, Last March of the Ents is functionally win the game in the Semi-Blue style decks. Semi-Blue, point of confusion that will probably persist after I do this, does not have anything to do with a total lack of interaction. It has more to do with this flipping your deck style game plan. I will say notably this list is not on Kinnan, so doing like Kinnan flips through your deck, not so much a thing. The lack of interaction came from most of the Thras list, which is running Cascade spells. You don't want to Cascade into Mental Misstep. It sucks. Helga doesn't have any Cascade spells. It doesn't matter. You just run stuff to protect what you're doing. But it is still, kind of proactively focus on your game plan. But here we got Worm's Chant, Silence, Fierce, MBT, all that stuff, some tutors. Reasonable deck list. Not like crazy high on interaction, but a pretty normal amount. Expedition Map is our only artifact. We're not fast mana-ing around here, really. And then we got Carpet, Sprawl, Wild Growth. And then we do have the Food Chain. Mist Hollow Griffin on its own with Food Chain. With net you infinite mana, cast your Helga, cast Mist Hollow Griffin, you start drawing your deck. And then in our mana base, Ancient Tomb, Cradle, we do have basics. I don't think we were on Avatar of Growth in this list, though, were we? Or no, we still were. I mean, it makes sense. It's a 3-drop that is basically a 1-drop that draws you a card, ramps you. It's pretty good. Tarnished Citadel, man, that art is something. Yeah, pretty normal mana base. Yeah, we're not doing Deserted Temple, even though we're like Cradle centric, just because that card doesn't help cast our stuff. Colorless Lands are kind of rough in a deck that has a triple pip commander that you're all about. Bubbanon was pretty good on its own. This is a pretty sick list. I got a little bored with Thras Semi-Blue. I think I would have more fun playing Helga because I still get some interaction. You can tune it to be less of this kind of thing if you need to. You still get to play with the really cool Semi-Blue stuff while still having interactive elements. It's just a little bit less like, let's go gambling with the Atalis and stuff like that. But I think it's just such a sick deck and sick archetype. I'm glad to see it still continue to do well. Then first place out of the Swiss, we got another Tivit. Tivit kind of cooking them this past weekend. Teferi Tezzeret again. We're on the Wayfarer. Here we're on Abolisher, no voice. We got Snapcaster Mage, which I really like. I think Snapcaster Mage is probably underplayed, especially in lower color blue decks. Urza, Metamorph. So we do have Kyoshi here. There's some cool stuff going on here. We got Transplant Theorist. 3 and a blue. Whenever it or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. So it lets you loot on artifacts, which can be huge with Tivit in general. And then 2 mana, put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. It also means that spell getting countered or whatever, or any relevant spell that gets countered, you probably don't have too many ways to get stuff from your graveyard, but Transplant Theorist can put it into your deck where you can tutor it or, try to draw into it. So probably mostly there for that first bit of text because it's when one enters. A lot of these cards are when you cast an artifact, like there's cheaper looters, but this will loot 5 when Tivit enters, which is nuts. But that other line of text, I think maybe matters more. It probably comes up some amount of the time. And then Meringue River Regent, which for 3 and a blue has the omen of draw 3, discard a card, then you put this into your deck. And then when this enters, return up to 2 other target non-land permanents to their owner's hands. I really don't know why they're running this, to be honest. Maybe there's a loop you can do with it. It's a fine card. It's hard to interact with, bounce 2 things. Maybe we'll see more that makes sense with it. The omen is fine too. Draw 3, discard a card. Reasonable. Imp Seal DT, Transmute. So very similar. Again, we have a different board wipe this time for Vanquish the Horde. Now just trying to fully wipe the board for as cheaply as we can. Still on Stock Up and the Time Twister in this one. Got Dark Grit, Mystical, Fluster, blah, 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 blah. Dovin's Veto again. Mana Drain just super popular in these Tivit decks. Here running Dig Through Time as another Delve spell. Chain Impact, not anything going too crazy. Around the Orange Chant, this one too. Very popular in this event. This card is just starting to just become a staple, essentially. Artifacts, this one on Enigma Jewel still. On Voltaic Key, no Manifold Key. Oh, that's an interesting one. Then we've got the Staff of Completion still here. Expedition Map again. They just really like getting their lands. Bender's Water Skin, 3 mana. Rock basically adds 1 mana of any color, and you untap it during each other player's untap step. Lets you kind of deploy stuff in ramp while also holding up at least a little bit of mana to interact on other players' turns. And then here we're also on the Black Market Connections. 30 lands, Cavern, Exotic Orchard. Here doing the Tivit's got to be cooking together with this Desolate Mire, Great Hall of the Citadel mana base that they have cooked up. This on Urza's Cave. So this is very similar in the mana base to the first one we looked at. Manamo, Command Tower, you know, of course, Horizon of Progress. I still don't really get the need to like run Expedition Map here. Like Fomori Vault is good. Manamo can be very, very strong. Maybe they're trying to assemble Manamo One Ring very often. It's sort of like their secondary plan to set up with these artifact tutors. I really couldn't tell you. Having lands in general, making your land drop is good if you get to like, you know, activate Weathered Wayfarer to keep getting into the game and make sure you don't run out of mana before you get to your Tivit. Reasonable. I still don't get the Meringue River Regent. Really? I really don't know. Let me know if you know what Meringue River Regent is doing here. Is it just like a pretty good mid-range card to just get rid of draw engines, you know, reset stuff? I have no idea. Let me know. He's done it again. This is our previous God of Commander and our current still reigning 7-time, I believe, God of Commander, Ryuji Takahashi on Tymna Kraum. He just keeps winning. He just keeps getting away with it. I don't think there's any major changes in the list, but let's go over it. A notable thing that he's been running most of this time that I'm aware of is Loyal Apprentice, which is kind of an OG farm style card. Has haste, makes a hasty 1/1 flyer to attack, make sure your Tymna is really properly enabled. We're also on Fairy Mastermind. Bowmasters, no Delny, but we're on the Facebreaker. Basically stapley stuff, and then Loyal Apprentice. Sorceries run Beseech the Mirror and J-Will. I honestly don't know if he was playing these before. Tutors, Sevrek, Beseech the Mirror, and Jessica's Will, which usually we'll see like a Bergie or something like that. Pact, Offer, we are on Reign of Filth. Okay. So it kind of looks like he's taking it a little leaner from the last list, from what I remember at least. It's been a while, you know. Swords, Silence Orange Chant, just staples here at this point. Born, we are on Deadly Rollick to respect these creature decks, which there are a lot of. No Ring, we are on the 2/2 mana rocks, the fast mana Wishclaw Talisman. On Dress Down to respect these creature decks also, and then the staple enchantments. 28 lands, a little bit higher. On Cavern and City of Traders. On Otawara. On Spire of Industry. No Forbidden Orchard. Again, who's trying to give out 1/1s to these guys' Cradle decks all day? Not me. I don't want to do it. So a little different with cards like Beseech, which I think are bangers. Just a super powerful magic card. Jessica's Will. Still respecting the creature decks. But I think tuned slightly to go a little quicker. Which is like the big strength of honestly TNK or any Grixis list over a lot of these creature decks is the ability to just keep hands that can just slam something turn 2 to win the game while also being built to be a, you know, Tymna deck. Let me know down below what you're thinking about this tournament. We didn't have a brand new crazy archetype like Semi-Blue to break through, but we do have some refining. We definitely see their metagame shifting. Decks like TNK getting more popular over there, Grixis-y stuff. Still not really dominating our top 12, although Tivit did quite well with 50% of them converting. Let me know what you're thinking. Any of this tech that you're thinking about stealing from them, or give you some ideas. And with all that being said, thank you so much for watching. And as always, go play cEDH. Have a good one, everybody.